Shalom, this is YAHAWAH. I want to show you some more information about us being the Jews. Now in the 15th century you had the dragon, Esau, the fourth beast, came up out of the dark valley of the European countries and took over the whole world. And the Most High calls it in the book of Daniel the fourth beast. So when we read in 2nd Ezra chapter 11 verse 39, it reads, "Art not thou it that remaineth of the four beasts, whom I made to reign in my world, that the end of their times might come through them? And the fourth came and overcame all the beasts that were past, and had power over the world with great fearfulness, and over the whole compass of the earth with much wicked oppression. And so long time dwelt he upon the earth with deceit." What is this deceit? Lies. What have we been dealing with? Lies. How did the Negroes get to the Americas? By slave ships. How did the Native Americans lose their land? These people from Europe are known as the Europeans, but the Bible calls them the Edomites. So they are part of this fourth beast. Let's go over to 2nd Ezra chapter 12 verse 10. "And he said unto me, This is the interpretation of the vision. The eagle," what is the representation? What is the image of this kingdom of America? Eagle. How about Europe? Rome, eagle. How about Spain? Eagle. How about Russia? Eagle. Most of the countries in the European Union have the mascot of the eagle. It reads, "The eagle whom thou sawest come up from the sea is the kingdom which was seen in the vision of thy brother Daniel, but it was not expounded unto him. Therefore now I declare it unto thee. Behold, the days will come, that there shall rise up a kingdom upon earth, and it shall be feared above all the kingdoms that were before it." As you can see, I got USA right there. "But this kingdom is going to rule with great wicked oppression." And they did that through their education, through their health, and through their religion, and through their military. So let's find out who the Israelites are. Here is a book called "America is the True Old World MU Discovered." This is who it was written by, Imhotep Chavez Elbey. This is a recent published of 2019. I'm going to go to page 67, and mainly I'm using this because he used an insert from another book, and I found this pretty intriguing. Page 67, we're going to start here where it says, These European Masons took a blood oath to never reveal to the children of the Moors who they truly were. As Azim Hopkins Bey quotes in the book, what your history books fail to tell you, George Washington, chairman of the Continental Congress of 1774, is documented saying, "If we would agree to take the fezzes and turbans off the Moors' heads and remove the sandals from their feet and enforce it with severe punishment, and also swear a death oath between ourselves to religiously and faithfully not allow anyone to teach the Moorish children whom they really are or whom their forefathers were, and only allow the Moorish children to be taught that they were truly Negroes, black people, and colored folks." George Washington stated 200 years from today, the Moorish people would not know their nationality, nor the national name of their forefathers. Also, they would not know from which land or ancestors that they descended from. End quote. This is a book called The Image of the Black in Western Art, From the Age of Discovery to the Age of Abolition, Europe and the World Beyond. This book was edited by David Byman, Henry Louis Gates Jr. This book was copyrighted 2011. All right. We're going to go to this picture. As we can see here, this is picture 36. Caesar Vasilio Richmore. Illustration for Vasilio, and that's in Italian. I don't want to butcher it, but this was in Venice, 1590. All right, page 487. Right now it's in the London and British Library. Okay, so let's look at number 36. You see right there, number 36. All right, so we're going to read the insert on what we're looking at. As you can see here, it says Moro de Condition. Moro de Condition. You see the two statues, the pillars on the side. He has a sword. He has a bow and arrow. He has a garment on, and then he has jewelry going around his side. He has a turban on. So we're going to drop down to 36. And we'll start here on page 52. This is the insert. It reads, more influential was Caesar Vasilio de Gil Habita Antiche. It gets into that Italian. Venice, 1590. A costume book which includes figures from Walgo Bossard and Rossi. These are artists. Not many of them, however, are shown as convincingly black. African and Moorish refer here also to Ottomans, North Africans, and Spanish Moriscos. Remember that, Spanish Moriscos. Even Vasilio's Ethiopian soldier, Ethiopo, Soldato, is dressed like a Turk. One of the very few exceptions is Vasilio's rich Moor, Moro de Conditions, what we read above, ultimately based on Nicolas Esclave Moor. This figure is, however, heavily armed, having a bow and quiver, a scimitar hanging at his side, and a dirk in his right hand. The text nearby insists on his wealth. He wears gold earrings, and the leather strap of his quiver is set with precious stones. Remember that. In his quiver, he has precious stones. His complexion is olive. Olives are black or green, claims Vasilio, unlike that of the black Moor, Moro de Barbaro, from Africa, represented on another page. So let's look at this more. So he was the black Moor. See that? See his nose, his lips. Look at the features. The earrings, the gold earrings, the turban. And remember what we just read about if we knew the truth on who our forefathers were. All right, so we're going to look at another one. This is number 37. Number 37. Now this is a brother who's also a Moor, but instead of living in Spain, he lived in Africa. Look at how the attire is different. It's a lot hotter down in Africa. Look at the strap around his arm. Look at his wool garment below his waist. Look at his sword. Look at his bow. Two different styles of black men in two different regions of the world. Now let's read the insert. 37. Cesar Veselio, Black Moor. Illustration for Veselio, Venice 1590. Facing, page 498, London, British Library. All right, so that's him. Brother from Africa, brother from Spain. Now let's go down and read the insert. It reads, his complexion is olive, just like the other brother, claims Veselio, unlike that of the blackamoor. Moro de Barbaria, that's who that is, from Africa, represented on another page, who is clearly described as black. Here the text next to the figure starts with the general remarks about African clothing before focusing on the image. In this country, most men of the lower orders wear cotton from the waist down while the upper body is naked. Women and men with black skin are very ugly, but deem people with white skin to be very ugly. Their noses are snub and flat, their teeth white, and their eyes both transparent and white. The legs of the Moor in our drawing are naked, as are his arms, which protrude from half sleeves of his outer garment, kept closed by the cords of his scimitar. Over this they wear a garment of coarse fabric or of cotton, with a hood they use to cover their head and protect it from the sun and rain. His slippers are made of colored leather. All right, so we're talking about that brother. So these are both Moors, one from the southern region and one from the northern region. The dress attire is totally different. Now let me show you another Moor. This brother is also a Moor. Notice the elaborate clothing. Notice the fringes. This brother has fringes of different style. Those are fringes. See that right there? Fringes. All right. Notice his garment here. Notice he has fringes. See that? Little border of blue maybe. I might be pulling too much, but he has fringes and it is bordered. The Israelites, they wore different style clothing. But notice the sword. Notice the gold fringe within his garment. And it kind of looks like what Evander Holyfield had on his last commercial, the same type of garment.
And on the go. You feel so safe, it's as if, I don't know, Evander Holyfield has your back.
I wouldn't click on that.
Hey, thanks.
Got a muffin for Ed.
All right.
You don't need those calories.
Well, can we at least split it? Nope.
Like a boxer's garment. Notice the slippers. Let's see who this is. Let's go to number 23. It reads here, another drawing by Lugosi, which also goes back to a woodcut by Aman, represents a Barbary Moor. So here's another Moor up in northern Africa with a giraffe. His pink hooded cloak is folded over his left shoulder, thus revealing both a knee-length white shirt with embroidery, those fringes, and a sword hanging at his side. Again, the closest model appears in manuscript costume books of the Ottoman Empire. He is a Barbary Moor. He also has what? Gold earrings, but elaborate clothing. Here's a book that's called Light and Truth, collected from the Bible and Ancient and Modern History, containing the universal history of the colored and the Indian race, from the creation of the world to the present time, by Robert Benjamin Lewis. This is an older book, and this book was published in 1844. So I started in the late 2000s, and I'm backing up to the older books now. I brought this out before, but I'm going to bring it out again. This is page 339. Now let's look at this. It says the word negro. Negro is derived from the Latin term niger, meaning black. The following terms and definitions are in the American edition of Dr. Walker's dictionary. Moor, a marsh, a fen, a negro. So now you know what moor is. Marsh, a fen, a bog, a swamp, a plant. Moorish, finny, marshy. Negro, blackamoor. Now we just saw that in the image of the black in Western art. In Dr. Johnson's dictionary, American edition, by Reverend Joseph Hamilton, M.A., 1810, we find these words thus defined. Black, dark, cloudy, mournful, wicked. Black, a negro, the dark color, mourning. Moor, a negro, marsh, fen, bog. Moorish or Maury, marshy, finny. Negro, a blackamoor, a Moor. In the Dictionary for Schools by Dr. Webster, American edition, we find these words thus defined. Negro, so he has three references that he's going with. He went with a dictionary from Dr. Webster. He went with another dictionary from Dr. Johnson. Then he went with another dictionary up here from Dr. Walker's book. So going back down, it says, in the Dictionary for Schools by Dr. Webster, it says, American edition, we find these words thus defined. Negro, as African by birth, or a descendant of one of full blood. Moor, a black man, a marsh, low ground. Negro, a blackamoor, a slave, a mean wretch. Moor, a black, marsh, watery ground. Okay, now he's going into Dr. Webster's definition of the complexion of the skin. He calls it the blood of Africa, or their descendants, as follow. Mangroon is all black, a full blood, a whole negro. Sambo is 3/4 blood, 3/4 negro. Mulatto is 1/2 blood. Quadroon is 1/4 blood, right? 1/4 negro. Now these are white terms. Mestizo is a 1/2 blood, 1/2 negro. Niger, a Latin word, was formerly used by the Moors, the old Romans, to designate any black inferior object, a plant, a marsh, flat, moist ground, bog. So we saw in the Western culture book that we saw a Barbary Moor, we saw a Blackamoor, and we saw a Barbarian Moor, right? So let's look at this. It says Micah. Micah, this is from the Bible. This is a prophet. The Moorishite, a prophet of the Moors, prophesied in the days of Hezekiah, king of Judah, and spoke to all the peoples of Judah, the Moors. So the Israelites were Moors. The people of Judah were Moors. Saying, thus saith the Most High of Hosts, Zion shall be plowed like a field, and Jerusalem shall become heaps, a forest. Micah showeth the wrath of the Most High against Jacob for idolatry. Moriseth was built by the Moors in the desert of Paran, in the land of Amalek, and was the ancient encampment of Israel in the days of Moses. Let's drop down. Let's go here. The Moors gained the highest reputation, both in arts and arms, of all the nations of the East. The mechanic and the fine arts, especially sculpture and painting, were in a very low state in Europe. When the Moors turned their attention to them and cultivated them with great success, the Moors had founded in Africa the Empire of Morocco, which was governed by a viceroy named Muka. The kingdom of the Moors flourished in the south of Spain for the space of 2 centuries in full vigor. So what happened? Spain was overran by the Moors, which were Jews. I want to jump over here and I'll look at the depiction of the Moors. It says here, this is on page 342. It reads, "The Moors, their dress is handsome, a sort of short shirt with wide sleeves, over which covers a cloth vest, fastened with small buttons and loops, embroidered richly with gold and silver. They wear linen drawers." Sound like the Levites. "With broad silk scarves around their waists, in which they stick a large knife with a curiously ornamental handle." See that? Sounds like the Israelites, doesn't it? We're going to go into the Bible, the book of Esther, chapter 1, verse 1. It reads, "Now it came to pass in the days of Artaxerxes," this is Artaxerxes, "which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia, over 127 provinces, that in those days when the king Artaxerxes sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan the palace, in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and princes of the provinces being before him." Why did I bring this out? I wanted to bring this out to show you that during the days of Esther, that the king that ruled Persia, his name was Artaxerxes. And in that country, you had Ethiopians living there. Now I'm gonna jump over to the 8th chapter, and I'm gonna drop down to verse 15. Esther chapter 8, verse 15. "And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel, of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple, and the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor. And in every province and in every city, whatsoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them." Why did I read this? Because I wanted you to see that many people of the land became Jews. Not to mention only that many people became Jews, but that there was a lot of Jews who dwelt alongside the Persians and the Ethiopians, which were all dark nations. Now I'm going to go into this book again called Blacks in Antiquity by Frank M. Snowden Jr. This book was published and copyrighted in 1970. We're going to go over to page 183, and it reads here in the middle of the paragraph. It says, "The Greeks and Romans knew the Ethiopians as military opponents at home and abroad." What I want to show you is that Ethiopian and Negro were equally used together. So sometimes they were called Negroes Ethiopians, and sometimes they were called Ethiopians Negroes. "The Greeks, Romans knew the Ethiopians as military opponents at home and abroad. Further, the monumental evidence of classical art points to the presence of the Negro in sizable numbers over a long period of time in various parts of the ancient world." So the Negroes were in the ancient world. What is the ancient world? This is where you hear about Israel, Egypt, Babylon, Persia, the Medes. The Negro was in sizable numbers over a long period of time in various parts of the ancient world. I'm going to pop over to page 184. We're going to drop down to the highlighted area. It reads, the Herodians mention of Ethiopians in Xerxes' army, like we read in the book of Esther, and the Negroes on Athenian vases of the 5th century BC had led to the conjecture that it was at that time, or this time, that blacks were seen for the first time in Greece in large numbers.
What message do you bring?
Earth and water.
You rode all the way from Persia for earth and water.
Do not be coy or stupid, Persian. You can afford neither in Sparta.
What makes this woman think she can speak among men?
So who was in Greece and who came to fight against the Grecians? The Negroes who were in Xerxes' army. So who are these Negroes? In the Bible it says there were only Jews, Persians, and Ethiopians. Who are these Negroes? The Negroes were the Jews. See? Let's drop down here. It is reasonable to assume, therefore, that a number of Ethiopians who accompanied Xerxes remained in Greece as captives. Many of them would have become slaves of various sorts. In addition, Ethiopians, as other non-Greeks and non-Romans, would have reached the Greco-Roman world through the slave market. So who are these Ethiopians? These Ethiopians were Negroes. Here's the book of Amos, chapter 9, verse 7. Are ye not as children of the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel, saith the Most High? Have not I brought up Israel out of the land of Egypt, and the Philistines from Captor, and the Syrians from Ker? All right. So he's saying here that the children of Israel are like the Ethiopians unto him. So we favored. Here's a book called The African Americans, Many Rivers to Cross by Henry Louis Gates, Jr., Donald Yahawashi. I'm going to go to page 20. Page 20. And look at what I highlighted here. It says Elizabeth I in 1596 and 1601 unsuccessfully ordered the expulsion of Negars and blackamoors from England. Even in the era of Thomas More, the term Ethiopian represented a pejorative to describe people of African descent. All right, here's an old book that I have. It's called Modern Times in the Living Past by Elson. The book was written and copyrighted in 1921. I just want to show you one little thing in here. We're on page 44. And I want you to see something. It says, for thousands of years from the earliest dawn of history, the Hamitic and Semitic peoples had been the leaders of human progress. Hamitic and Semitic peoples had been the leaders of human progress. Now it has a semicolon there, meaning stop. Then it says, but from that day to the present, the Indo-European branch of the Caucasian race has been master of the civilization of the world. So who are the Hamitic people and the Shemitic people? Because they're saying that these Caucasians, they jumped on the scene and took over, but it didn't mention them in the same breath as Hamitic and Semitic people. it took off with another breath, Indo-European branch of the Caucasian. Dictionary, Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary. Shem, name, fame. You hear a lot of the Jewish people, they say Hashem. That's what the name means, Hashem. Fame, it doesn't mean the Most High isn't the Most High's name. The Most High's name is YAHAWAH. So when they say Hashem, they're just saying the name. So Shem, name, fame. Second son of Noah and progenitor of the Semitic race. Was born 98 years before the flood. Genesis 11 and 10. And lived 600 years, outliving his descendants for 9 generations, excepting Eber and Abraham. Eber is the father of the Hebrews. Now we're going to touch on this again. We're going to revisit Shem in part 2, and we're going to revisit Eber. But right now we know what Shem means. The name Shem means Semitic. Now we understand where Semitic comes from. It comes from Shem. All right, we're going to go to page 266, and we're going to bring out Japheth. Why not? We said Shem, let's get Japheth. Japheth, the Most High will enlarge. Son of Noah, gives you the verses, had 7 sons. Descendants occupied, isles of Gentiles, blessed by Noah. So the isles is the islands. Okay? Check out the video that we put up about a week ago about the dragon going after the Israelites. So we're going to see where the Negroes come from. Go back to something that we know. Compact Bible Dictionary. And let's go to Ham. All right, we're going to go to Ham on page 213. Drop down. Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of 8 persons to live through the flood. Why are we going here? Because we read in another book that the Hamitic and the Shemitic people ran the world. So we're trying to find out, okay, which one are the Negroes? So it's saying that this is Ham's lineage. And then it says, Ham became the progenitor of the dark races, but it says not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, the Libyans, and the Canaanites. You see that? And so what they tend to do, because Africa was controlled by the Ethiopians at one time, all the Negroes who lived in a certain land, like we saw that in the resource that I brought out earlier, that the Negroes surpassed in numbers the Greeks and the Romans in that land. And sometimes they even interchangeably called them Ethiopians, which was a rare sight to see an actual Ethiopian. So the Negroes are not Ham. So who are they? Here's a book called Roget's International Thesaurus, 3rd edition. We're going to go right to the point. It's an old book. When you go to the definition of Negro, it says Negro, color person, like we read in Light and Truth. Color person. Black, Amor. So now we see here too that the Negroes of Blackamoor are called Blackamoor. Jim Crow slang U.S. Darky, Sambo, Ebony. The image of God. So who is the image of God? Wow. You see that? Image of God. Then it says Ethiop or Ethiop, swarthy Ethiop. The Most High always used a similitude with the Negroes being just like the Ethiopians. He says, aren't you as the Ethiopians unto me? Interchangeably, Negro, Ethiop, the image of God. Here's a book called 2 Lectures on the Natural History of the Caucasian and Negro Races. Very racist book, by the way. Very racist book. This was written in 1844. It's amazing what they put in these books, being so racist during these years. 1844. Okay, so we're going to page 14. I'm going to drop down to this area. It says, in a paper read by Dr. Morton before the American Philosophical Society, he first took a view of those nations with whom the Egyptians appear to have held intercourse, either for war or commerce, in the early epochs of their history, and amongst those whom he has been able to identify from a comparison of the heads figured in the work of Rossellini, because they measured all the skulls of the different peoples in that land, and they found a majority of the skulls being Negro in Egypt and in Jerusalem. It says, are the Celts, the Scythians, the Pelasgic, and the Semitic nations, the Hindus, Arabs, and Negroes. So who are the Semitic nations? The Hindus, the Arabs, and the Negroes. Now, you see who the Negroes come from. If they're not of Ham, they're Semitic. There's another book. It's called The Jews and the Moors of Spain, Volume 10, by Jos Proskauer. Jews and Moors of Spain, published in 1887. We're going to go to page 173. And we're going to drop down. Now this is showing you how the Moors and the Jews, they kept calling them the same thing, but they didn't want to put them together, just like we saw the pictures where they didn't want to label the black Moor with the barbarian Moor. It says here, the Moors were conquered by soldiers. This is during the Inquisition. The Moors were conquered by soldiers. The Jews by monks. The Moors fought against the military of Spain. The Jews were inhumanly slaughtered by the militia of Christ. These are the Christians that fought against the Moors and the Jews. The Moors suffered the pangs of war, and the Jews writhed in agony under the tortures of the Inquisition. So now we're going to put these two together, because you may read this and think that they're really different in skin complexion, but they're the same. And they had to take them down differently than they did the Moors. So it's just like the military. You have special ops in the military, just like you had special ops back then to take down the Jews. There was a certain type of crew that had to take them down versus the Moors. We're going to go into the Holy Bible. Song of Solomon. What does it say? I am black but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. Oh, there's one more verse in here. So Solomon said he's black. Not only was he black, but he was handsome, comely. We're going to go to chapter 5 in the same book, and we're going to go to verse 11. His head is as the most fine gold. His locks are bushy and black as a raven. See that? locks are bushy, and black as a raven. Remember, he said the negro, and it said the image of God. Okay, I'm going to bring out this book here. It's called The Image of the Black by Jewish Culture. History of the Other, Abraham Melamed. Now, I don't know any brothers who have brought this out yet. So you saw it here first. There may be times, or you may see me bring out something another brother may have brought out, but that's okay. All we're doing is regurgitating this so that everyone can be marked by seeing it, that we are the true Jews. So don't be alarmed when you see it on different videos or more than one brother is showing it. But I tell you one thing, these books are very, very expensive, and every brother don't have these books. And brothers, get this book before they're all gone, because once these are all gone, you won't find them anymore. The going price of a hardcover book is $14.70. They are hiding our history in these books. Do you see this? They are hiding our history in these books. This is Amazon. And this book was translated by Betty Sigler Rosen in 2003. We're going to go to page 89. And we're going to start here at the bottom of 89. It reads, "The last example I know of appears in Parker de Rabbi Eliezer, 24, a very late midrash from the 8th or 9th century, which may already contain Islamic influences. At first, reading it seems surprisingly different from the others." Insert. It reads here, "He blessed Noah and his sons, as it said, and the Most High granted them the gifts and bequeathed the entire world to them. He blessed Shem and his sons, black, Sha'orium, Shem is black, and comely." That's what they told Solomon. He's black and handsome, and granted them the entire cultivated world. He blessed Ham and his sons, black, Sha'orium. So Ham and Shem are black, as the raven. Now when you read Song of Solomon, like we read in chapter 5, it says that his hair is black and bushy like a raven, and granted them the coast of the sea. He blessed Japheth and his sons, all of them white, Lavanium, and handsome, and granted them desert and fields. So we know the truth about this. Japheth was also a dark-skinned man. Rabbi Akiva says that they cast off the yoke of heaven and made Nimrod, slave son of a slave, king over them, so that the sons of Ham are slaves, and woe to the land that is ruled by a slave. That's the insert. Let's read the text. This text surprises for several reasons. First, there is no mention of punishment, but rather a positive statement is made about a blessing given before Ham sinned. Only the last sentence relates to the punishment of Ham's descendants. Secondly, both Shem's and Ham's descendants are described as black. Do y'all see that? Do you see that? Shem and Ham's descendants are described as black. The next page. Sha'orium. By contrast with Japheth, who are the white and handsome, Lavanim, Ve Yaphum, black skin is attributed not only to Ham's offspring, Neither is it shown as negative nor as a punishment, but in the positive context of a blessing. Only slavery, entirely separated from skin color in this case, is later described as the punishment for the sin of Ham. This, and not skin color, separates Ham from all the others. This midrash follows the biblical source more closely than all the others, mentioning slavery as the sole punishment, while skin color is cited as a blessing rather than a curse. Isn't that interesting? Let's drop down here to the bottom of this page. It reads in the last paragraph, while Shem's children are black and comely, Ham's are black as a raven. The first obviously paraphrases the Song of Songs 1 and 5 and is a positive statement. The description of Ham's children, black as a raven. So now when you read that, recognize this is not talking about a so-called white man with black hair. It's not talking about the texture of the hair. It's talking about the color of his hair. Black as a raven paraphrases the Song of Songs 5 and 11, where it describes the beautiful black locks of the beloved. Remember, it said his locks were bushy. In its original context, it too is a positive statement. But we have seen how the image of the black raven grew negative in time when linked to the complexion in general rather than to the hair color. This was the accepted view among midrash authors who are Jewish. Hence, while the black sons of Shem are described in the context of fine appearance, the black sons of Ham are linked to the despised raven. The sons of Shem are comely despite their complexion, while the sons of Ham are like the raven because of theirs. There is now a common denominator linking the black comely sons of Shem with the handsome white sons of Japheth. Look at that. So what happened? How did it change? How did Shem become white in literature? It says here that he was black, and this was something that the Muslims had. You know, the Turks ruled, and all these different Islamic people ruled, and they know Shem was black. That's why they said, how did Israel leave black and come back white? Okay? Let's go over to page 91. This is what happened. Jewish scholars of the Middle Ages and early modern times who copied, edited, and eventually printed this book, Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, had trouble accepting the designation of Shem as black. They had a problem with this. They knew the people of Israel were black, but they had a problem with this because a new converted Jew was coming into play. And they had to change history by saying that the Jews were no longer black but white. Even though the source declared it comely, meaning handsome, and altered the text to make Shem white and to identify him with Japheth, by contrast, Ham's blackness was reinforced. This is why they started calling you Negroes Ham that were Shemitic. They had to put a ploy out there to make you believe that everyone that was dark-skinned was Ham. But as we read the definition of Ham, it named the sons of Ham, which was Cush, Mizraim, the Libyans, and the Canaanites. But it said not the Negroes. So now we understand why they changed everything. There's a book that's called Jewish Pirates of the Caribbean. How a generation of swashbuckling Jews carved out an empire in the New World in their quest for treasure, religious freedom, and revenge. Now you have conversal Jews and then you have Jews. This is written by Edward Tritzler. This was published in 1941. And we are going to page 214. I'm going to start the last paragraph. It says, when I was in the synagogue, I counted about 100 Jews, all merchants, not one mechanic person of them. Most were rich in apparel. We saw that in the books that we had, that most of the Jews, Moors, wore elaborate clothing. Were rich in apparel with various jewels glittering, for they are the richest jewelers of any. They are generally black and may be distinguished from Spaniards or native Greeks. So now we know how they're distinguished. They look totally different. Their hair a more perfect raven black, like we read in the Bible, King of Solomon. They have a quick piercing eye and strong intellect. Several of them are comely, handsome, gallant, proper gentlemen, just like we read about the Moors. I knew many who I saw daily upon the exchange. Let's read that again. When I was in the synagogue, I counted about 100 Jews, all merchants. Not one mechanic person of them. Most were rich in apparel. This is in Spain. With various jewels glittering, for they are the richest jewels of any. They are generally black and may be distinguished from Spaniards or native Greeks. Their hair a more perfect raven black. They have a quick piercing eye and strong intellect. Several of them are comely, gallant, proper gentlemen. I knew many who I saw daily upon the exchange. So they were black. These Jews were black.